Welcome to the Condor DM Show. Tonight I'm covering Middle Earth. Middle Earth role-playing. MERP. It's going to be exciting. Welcome to the Condor DM Show. It's going to be exciting. Started a few minutes earlier than early, just to make sure some people, little pressure, see it live, get them here, because I know there's some people that really want to see this from the get-go. Want to hear everything. I don't want them to be behind. If they have an opportunity to be here, I want to make sure they know about it. There's some pressure to get them in, right? It's going to be fun. Fun. One more. I just pressed the start button. Here we are. So again, welcome to the Condor DM Show. MERP. Oh, this is going to be good. It's going to be good. It was created by ICE. I am being humorous, but I'm not at the same time. And I'm just not talking about the ICE that you think. ICE Crown Enterprise. And sadly, they never had time to really update it. They lost the license. So what you get in the old school with MERP, that's it. We are all wonderful human beings. It's going to be a great night. A great night. All focused on Middle Earth role-playing. I'll be able to explain to you guys why it's different. I put it this way. I think when it comes to the difference between this and Dungeons and Dragons, because a lot of people say, like, well, how is it different from D&D? D&D is about game first. This is about setting first. Is it purely token? It's token influence, token tone, and then ICE's way of filling in the gaps, their perception of Middle Earth, the world. Go, Craig. Black Rose, Monkey. I love you all. I'm so happy people are already showing up on time for this. This is going to be good. So is it pure token? No. It's token tone pushed into it, but you're not playing those characters. It's Middle Earth, given what token says about it, mixed with ICE Crown Enterprises, ICE, their interpretation, like their view of what's trying to be pitched about Middle Earth, the world. It's setting first, so it definitely expects players to play characters in a way that's more aimed at being true to the setting. In a way, Dungeons and Dragons, the settings can take a hit sometimes, because unlike this game, where the setting comes first for MERP, in Dungeons and Dragons, the game comes first. So you can play Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk and have a similar experience with D&D, because you play the game the way you want to, right? So it sometimes can take away from the setting. The settings in D&D would probably be, they would be benefited if they could put more restraint on the way players play the game when playing in that setting. But since settings don't push those type of restraints in D&D, sometimes a setting can lose its feel or flavor, right? There's a lot of work from the DM side to get a setting in D&D to really go across. But with MERP, Middle Earth, it's the players working with the game master to make sure you're true to the setting. And it's not about building a setting. It's about already having a setting and trying to protect what is there. Because how do you make sure MERP is not just D&D? Well, if you're true, if you're restrained, if you're held back, if you do what the setting is expecting to you, it can feel like Token's world. But if you play it the way you want, well, then how is it really different than Dungeons and Dragons? Good morning, Grim DM. I'm so glad you're here, dude. I'm glad you had this morning free. It's the weekend, so I'm assuming on weekends it's a little bit more open for you. I'm glad you're here. Really am. And Drift made it in time. Whew. I'm glad I started a little bit early just to make sure everyone had time for this one, because this is going to be special. It's going to be good. I don't want to give too much away going into it because some of these principles are just so obvious going in. Like, is it purely token? No, it's token tone really pushed really hard from the setting point of view. But Middle Earth, there's a limitation on how far token went with it. So Ice Crown Enterprises does try to fill the gaps in. But I don't think they do a bad job of it. Though in reality, MERP is a bit rough. It's not perfect. And they lost a license before they could really keep perfecting the entire thing, right? And that's a sort of sad shame. They actually have a good idea here. And it's being true to the setting is true for a lot of the old school side games. D&D, my only criticism there was sometimes, depending on who's running it, if you don't try to push the flavor of the setting really hard, because there's no restraints on play can feel the same. Like it can feel the same in Greyhawk as it does in Forgotten Realms. Some of the setting fluff and feel can be taken away because you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Where here again, it's about you and the players as a team trying to be true as much as you possibly can through restraint to the setting so you can feel like you're in Token's world and not just playing another Dungeons and Dragons game. Like, how do you guarantee you're not just in D&D world? How do you separate it? In D&D, it's about your character in the adventure, where in Token's world, it's about the world and the feel and the tone and being true to it so it can be something. Again, if you get a DM who's not careful with the setting in Dungeons and Dragons, if they don't pitch it well, if they don't put the flavor in, they don't really drive it home, you can lose feel of the setting really quickly. Any experienced D&D player will agree with me. It can be a criticism sometimes, where in a way it's almost like a more generic setting is more appropriate for D&D because the game and how you play it, that freedom comes first. Where the freedom to play the character the way you want and do what you want, nah. It's not here. Again, and I would also say MERP is based on Rollmaster. Hope Philo gets around because Philo is a Rollmaster guy. It is a version of Rollmaster, but like lightened up. Oh, Monkey, I love you, dude. I appreciate the support. We'll be talking soon, Monkey. We'll be talking soon, and it's about my game. We'll be talking soon. Well, that's awesome, Drift. I'm so glad. Monkey, I appreciate it. And yes, guys, for who wanted to get in on membership, I will be doing member only, some streams and videos coming up in the near future. Plan them out. I got ideas. I mean, when I say near future, I mean really near, but just want to give people time to get used to that whole gimmick. Make sure people are getting in on it. But I want everyone to know who's watching, yes, there will be member only stuff coming. So if you're willing to support me that way, I'll work for it. I promise you. And it will be good. Good stuff. Sometimes I wish I could just share everything, but you got to work for the people that are going to support you. So if you're willing to give me some support, you'll get it back, I promise. And it'll be good stuff. It won't be secondary to what you see me doing out in the open. Some things will be like you just get early access to some videos, right? I don't know if that all completely matters to you, but the member-only stuff, yes, we'll be doing some special streams where, I feel like I can say. And that's we're all part of the journey there, Black Rose. New to me too. But feels right. So we're good. But tonight is going to be really good because you're going to get to see where MERP is. If I were to say something about Rollmaster, I like what they did. I like how they took Rollmaster and they eased it up a bit. Now, for a guy like Philo, who's here sometimes that you guys see, he'll like hardcore Rollmaster. So I totally get it. Hardcore Rollmaster is good once you get the game down. Right? But they take Rollmaster and just ease up on it a bit. If you ever see people playing MERP in a way you see a lot of magic, I would say right away, if there seems like it's too much magic, that's a table problem, not a game problem, right? Remember, the game is about restraint, limit on magic, limit on other things. It's about experiencing the tone of token and the actual setting. That's almost more important than just you playing the character you want to play. So when you're going to play Merc, I would say I'd hope that when you go to invest in Merc, that you're really there to get that token feel. I mean, you can already go play D&D the way you want. So it's like they're trying to hit on the part of the market where it's like, okay, you can freely do with Dungeons and Dragons what you please. So why bother giving you just another D&D game, right? So they want to give you Middle Earth. And for that, that means you have to commit. You have to be invested in that, wanting to go through that experience. And they do it pretty good. And it's so good, and their version of Rollmaster is so good that we talked about it the other night. There's the Varg, a very controversial guy who a lot of people say his game was pretty good. He brought out a game many years later, inspired by Merc. I would have liked to see what Ice Crown Enterprises would have done if they kept the license, but that's a sad shame. So you do get this sort of rough Merc game. Some people like it, some people don't. It never really got more love beyond a certain point because they lost the right to keep working on it. They lost the license to Lord of the Rings. That's how that went down. And you might hear me using the term ICE. Like, just don't get confused. Obviously, we're not talking about politics here or immigration. We're talking about Ice Crown Enterprises, which is, on short, you say ICE, right? Easiest way. And before recent politics, when I would talk about this in the past, that's how I would refer to them. So it's out of habit. Though I do like Lord of the Rings and Token. A lot of people said D&D is inspired by that, but it's definitely not exactly that. And MERP, I think, proves that point. If you really want to know what Token's world was like, this game does a really good job of it. And they fill the gaps in a way I think you see some of the TV programming for Lord of the Rings now, where they're trying to fill gaps where I'm like, why didn't they go check out MERP? MERP does a really good job of trying to sell Middle Earth by filling the gaps in where Token doesn't explain everything. And such a good job, I've never heard a complaint from Lord of the Rings fans who say they did a terrible job. Now, sometimes when you play MERP, there is a little bit of making sure the system works. Sometimes there can be a little clashing with the setting, right? The setting and the game rules do clash, right? But again, there are restraints in there to try to make that. It's not perfect. But again, it's a shame they never had a chance to work on it more because they lost the license. I don't want to say more than that. We're down to like a couple minutes, maybe like a minute or so here before I start. So the influence of game birth will be a short area because you guys already know there's not many influences on. The influence for this is pretty straightforward. Yes, Arca. We'll call you Arca for short. I don't know. Arca, nice to meet you, Arca. I hope you stay for the whole thing. It's going to be really, really good. Really good. This is Merp. Okay, little quick update. Tuesday is off script. Just chatting with you, sitting down. And then we got Space Opera, Bushido, and then next Sunday is my birthday, which we'll be doing Shadowrun. Little reminder on that stuff, right? I really hope you guys enjoyed tonight. I think it's going to be excellent. Same rhythm as always. We go into fluff, influence, pretty straightforward, and birth of the game, how to run it, character creation, what makes it, I think, a little better, criticisms and defenses. And if I get to the part where we've gotten into it, I think I got some notes for worth mentioning, but I don't really know if I really need to go there. I think most of what I need to say is going to be said early on. And that's how we're going to finish tonight, but it's going to cover the whole thing. And always make sure to take care of the people that run the game and the players. So that's how to run it and character creation. Those are the two areas I'll take care on. No worries. Everything I say tonight will be accurate if you go get the game. Period. And it will sell. It will do what I say. So overview doesn't, I'm not going to go into all the details, but it will be accurate. You'll get out of it what I say you'll get out of it, I promise. Okay, here we go. Okay, Middle-earth role-playing, influences, and birth. The core foundation, as you all know. Token first. Everything starts with Lord of the Rings. Not just inspiration, not just tone, direct source material. This is one of the earliest major RPGs where the setting isn't something like it is something. That changes design immediately. You're not building a world, you're adapting to an existing one. Oh, well, if you're considering going for the actual tabletop role-playing game, strap in, my friend. I'm going to sell it to you. I'm a super nerd. Just going over this before I started doing this for you guys, I get myself hyped. So this will get you to the point. I promise you'll want to get this at the table if you listen all the way through this. The Designers and Company, published by, I say ICE. Sorry, Iron Crown Enterprises. ICE. I don't know why I kept saying ICE. First released in 1984. Very interesting year, right? ICE already had a reputation for crunch-heavy systems. And more importantly, they already built the engine behind Rollmaster, or as some people call it, Chartmaster. I wouldn't say exactly, but I'm not the One Ring system. I'm not exactly 100% sure on that one, but I don't know. If it's connected to Rollmaster, probably is. MERP is a simplified Rollmaster. Simplified, but I think cleaned up better in a way that it would bring more people in. MERP is basically Rollmaster stripped down to make Middle-earth playable. Same DNA, skill-based systems, detailed combat routes, but reduced complexity. More accessible entry point for a Rollmaster type of game. It's not a fresh system. It's derived. It's a derived system tuned for a license. The rise of licensed RPGs. By the early 80s, D&D proved RPGs could sell. Companies started looking at existing IPs. MERP is one of the early major examples of turning a known fictional universe into a playable RPG. This is before the flood of licensed games later on. MERP helps establish that people want to play inside worlds they already know. The challenge they had to solve. Token's world presents a problem. Magic is subtle. Power levels are uneven. The tone is grounded, not gamey. If you run it like Dungeons and Dragons, it breaks immediately. So MERP tries to keep the feel of Middle-earth while still making a playable system. The tension defines the entire game. You'll feel it, you'll know it, you'll be running into it. Now, this is just the fluff early on. We're going to get to the hot stuff soon. Tone versus system conflict. Built in from birth. Token equals low-key, mythic, restrained. Rollmaster engine equals mechanical, detailed, sometimes brutal. MERP is born trying to balance those two forces, and that creates a unique feel, but also friction. MERP doesn't focus on playing Aragon, replaying the War of the Ring. Instead, it expands the world around lesser-known regions, side events, parallel adventures. This is huge. It turns Middle-earth from a story into a play space, a sandbox. Timeline positioning. MERP is usually set around the late Third Age, same general era of Lord of the Rings, but it avoids interfering with the main narrative. Players exist in the world not as a replacement for the main characters. They're trying to create a game with the world more than just focusing on the tone of the story. That's where I say it's not exactly, there's a little bit of what they put into it compared to what Token is putting into it from story side and tone side on that level. Bit of a clash. Why it took off, and it did for a while. MERP succeeded because it hit a combination. Popular IP, Token, recognizable world, a system with depth, but more accessible than Rollmaster. So a lot of people like the idea of Rollmaster. It was just really hard. But here's Rollmaster, more easier to get into. It gave players a way to enter Middle Earth without needing to build anything. MERP links two important threads: simulationist systems via Rollmaster, licensed world play via token. That combination becomes a template for many later RPGs. D&D asked, what if you explored a fantasy world? MERP asked, what if you could step directly into Middle Earth and live there? And to live there, you got to be true to it. Okay, now we're going to focus on that's the fluff. Look, there's not a lot of fluff and birth and influence. It's direct. You know what influences this. I don't have to spell that out for a long time. There's not a lot of meat on that bone. I mean, it's interesting and deep in certain ways, but I don't got to mention more. So we're going to go straight to how to run Middle Earth role-playing, focusing on the Game Master here. Sorry about background noise. If you run this like a standard dungeon crawl, you'll wreck it. MERP lives or dies on one thing: respecting tokens' tone while still using a structured system. That balance is your job, talking to you, Game Master. You're protecting the setting. A little personal opinion. I say it's you're protecting. You're protecting. You can't let just people play the way they want, because you need them to play a certain way, because you're trying to get the feel and trying to do Rollmaster and the token at the same time. If not, it can turn into that generic D&D feel. You don't want that. Okay, you are not running a sandbox first. The world is a bit of one, but you're not running that first. You are running a world with a tone. That's the important detail here. Unlike something like Dungeons and Dragons, you don't just populate areas and let chaos happen. You don't lean on constant danger and randomness. You are enforcing all the way through NPCs, through everything. It's like that I told you about that, the mind or atmosphere thing. This is a major focus on that type of atmosphere push, right? So you are enforcing tone, theme, consistency with Middle Earth. That's what you want. You want consistency all the way through. The world isn't just functional. It has a feel you must protect. Keep the focus on the edges of the story. Do not insert players into major canon events. That's not what you're doing here. Do not replace key characters. Do not rewrite the War of the Rings. Instead, operate in lesser known regions on purpose. Side conflicts that weren't that well spelled out, but mentioned maybe. Parallel stories. Hey, you're doing your own adventure over here, separate from what they were doing in the main story. Players exist within Middle Earth, not as its center. Magic must be rare, subtle, and controlled. This is where I would say I see most GMs mess up. If magic starts feeling like spell spam, easy solutions, common tools, you've broken the setting. In token, magic is subtle, mysterious, often indirect. Your job, dial the system down to match the tone. It's like not giving out too many magic items, right? Like, don't just allow it to be, because it can happen. There are ways to play this where you can actually blow it up. And I've seen that happen at a lot of tables where right away after a few sessions, the game master's going, something's going wrong here. And I'm like telling him, magic is becoming a toy, dude. That got to stop right away. It got to be special and rare. Combat is dangerous and not the main attraction. MERP uses a system derived from Rollmaster, which means combat can be brutal. Critical results matter. Fights can end fast. If you know anything about Rollmaster, everything I said is just spot on. And it doesn't exactly get away from these features. So don't build sessions around combat. Nope. Don't assume players should fight everything. You hear this from a lot of old school games. Fighting is a punishment rather than something you should be just doing. It's not a video game in that way. Combat should feel risky, meaningful, sometimes, a lot of times, avoidable. What is the vibe of the token low? Nice setting. It's taken what you're doing and say the action part of it, where if you watch even the movies, they do this pretty well. Or if you read the books, you'll notice there is a lot more adventuring around, encountering the places, getting the vibe from going around, say, a town or the place where the people are, and you're talking to the NPCs, and they have attitudes from the locations, which you can read up on. But as far as like magic and that, everything, you'll notice everything from combat to magic is rare in use, and that's so it doesn't become a play toy. This is true for a lot of the old games. They understood the restraint creates something special when you finally see it and experience it. So when you finally do reach the magic, it's, oh, wow, right? It's not like somebody's just using magic openly to fix everything around them. And they point that out, especially when Gandalf shows up early, when he's doing the fireworks for the kids. It's like magic is almost never seen. So when you see it, it is magical, right? There's a rarity to it. And when you see more stronger magic, it's like in Conan, it's special. So restraint, held back, that's what makes these things good. If not, they become a plaything. Starts feeling something less special. Travel is a core pillar of play. This is huge for Merc. Middle Earth is about distance, journey, environment. You should emphasize travel time, terrain difficulty, encounters along the way, not just you arrive, the journey is gameplay. So this is one game where in D&D, sometimes I would go, oh, here's a week and we stop in and do things like we stop through the week and do things. You want a bit more gradual time through the travel. Like you want to make this feel like time is passing. Like players have to play through this a bit. You don't want to get too anal about it, but you want to make sure that it's almost the way I do it. Every little event that can happen, even if you're speeding some hours along or you're going to speed some time along, you want to stop at every little event that could happen, zoom in, and role play. So you never just go by the church. I'll zoom in. It's like, okay, all right, you're so many hours past, but you're going by a church or something. Boom, I zoom in. You guys are riding. You can react to it. You could do something with it. If not, you can bypass that and we move on. But every little thing to make sure time is spread out and you're not just instantly, jumping past these things. You boom, from an overhead view, you zoom in, you stop, and you make some role play happen for those moments. So you want travel to feel like it's taking some time. So you don't just arrive. The journey is part of the game. In a way, this is so good that the lessons I learned from this is something, again, I took back to D&D. And when I talk about zooming in, I was talking about it yesterday, I knew I'd be coming to the game that really got me to focus on that a lot, which is don't just say a week goes by. Time through the week will go by. You'll skip some time, but every moment where there could be a reason that you're just not just traveling, on foot or in the wagon, where you look at a place, you stop, you zoom in, and role play happens. And that's how you can somewhat speed through gaps of time that are unnecessary to focus on, but still be stopping and extend it out. If not, you just be like, okay, 2 weeks to travel, you get to the gates. That's not this game. Knowledge and lore are valuable. Unlike many RPGs, knowing history, understanding cultures, recognizing places matters mechanically and narratively. Reward players for paying attention, learning the world, acting appropriately within it. So it's like when it says reward, it really means it. And what it's saying is the more you have studied this stuff going in, the more you recognize this stuff, create opportunities, right? So it's like you're acting appropriate. Well, there's someone who might have a special deal for you, might make something easier, might make something more accessible to you. The more you pay attention, the more the game master should reward that kind of gameplay. It is the carrot on the stick type of thing. You're like you do want them chase, but you got to give it, and you got to make sure they're happy to keep doing that, right? Because that's the gameplay. You want people focused. Use threat carefully. Middle Earth is not constantly crawling with monsters. When threats appear, orcs, Nazgul, dark forces, they should feel significant, not routine encounters. Not routine encounters, and not just XP delivery systems like in Dungeons and Dragons. Or at least that's the way the designers of this game felt. Like XP delivery system was D&D. D&D can be some of this, but it's in guidance, so it doesn't have to be. This is, like many of the side games, more raw, more you have to do this. Where again, every time I tell people go back to D&D, it's a guidance. So there's a lot of this they want you to, they would rather you do this, but it's not enforceable. It's just like you can ease up or do it. Tone management is your hardest job. It's true, because you're constantly needing to enforce the tone and feel and experience of the game. So in a way, as a game master, unlike a D&D game where you can sit back and let some things happen, really to make this not feel like Dungeons and Dragons, you constantly get to get on atmosphere. Like focus, make it a feel constantly. You are constantly balancing as well. A system that can feel mechanical, a setting that should feel mythic. So you got a light roll master system, and you got to apply that right. And that's going to be chart heavy. That's going to be all the things you imagine. But at the same time, you got to get that atmosphere all the time right. Communicate it through NPCs. Communicate just through the way things look, appearance, description. That means don't over-explain everything. True. Remember, I explained this all to you recently, too. You don't want to over-explain. You want to plant seeds. Leave room for mystery. Let people fill the gaps in, or just, they don't know. But it makes them think about it. They're trying to answer questions. People are constantly trying to answer questions in their minds. That's why they can fill the gaps in. Sometimes they'll just leave mystery, but they're trying to answer. So don't over-explain things. Leave room for mystery. Let things feel larger than the players. If it feels too gamey, you've gone too far. You want them to feel like they're in the world. And that can be done. Like I've given the advice to really get there in the last so many days. And you pick up a lot of it from this book, from the game here. Preparation. Focus on place, not plot. You hear about plots all the time. Plots are secondary. They'll get built off what you're doing. Don't prep linear stories. Force quest. You prep locations, cultures, situations. This is where you're leaning a bit more into the sandbox idea of it. Then let players move through them. Events develop naturally. So basically what they're saying is, as players are doing actions and things, and you're going to make the world react to them, you're going to see a plot. Like relax, Game Master. This will all come together in your head through a sort of sandboxy approach, right? The built-in tension. This is your eternal awareness. The system wants detail. The setting wants restraint. Your job is to use the system without letting it overpower the tone. It stops feeling like Middle Earth if you ignore the system. It stops functioning as a game. The hard truth, most GMs fail Merc because they run the rules correctly but miss the tone. You're doing two jobs at once. Or they get the tone, but they ignore the rules. You need both. So in a way, here, like a lot of GMs can focus trying to get one thing. This is a balance game. You got to get the role master side of the mechanics right, but at the same time be pitching atmosphere the entire time. It's a lot of work. D&D Game Master, what adventure do I run? Merc GM, how do I make this feel like Middle Earth while still letting the system breathe? Okay. We're moving into the player side of it. So that balance stuff, it's one thing to tell you about rules and the dice and all that. That's me. That's secondary stuff, right? That's secondary stuff. The stuff I just told you as a game master is more valuable because the feel of Merc is exactly what it needs to be. Now, I'm sorry for some of you that are here all the time. You've heard me say similar things about other games, but it's just true. It's true in the other games as well. That's why some of this is going to sound familiar, because if setting's important for another game, you're going to hear a lot of familiar language, because as a game master, you need to do the same here as you would there, right? About, say, pushing setting. That's where D&D does make things a lot easier, where the expectations, even if you fail them to a degree, the guidance, you haven't really failed. Where in this, if one overkills the balance of the other, you're failing for what it is, and overall the players will not feel something, or they'll feel the thing, but the game is lacking because the rules aren't applied that well. You got to get both done here. Okay, so this is character creation. This is where players either get it or immediately they start pulling it in the wrong direction, because Merc gives you more freedom than Token really supports and expects you to self-regulate. Sometimes I get after games for this. I used to look at 3rd edition. I would hear people go, "You're playing a Munchkin character, like you're taking advantage of the rules." I'm like, my statement was to everyone, if there's a rule in there or something in there, every player should be able to use it without being guilted. There's some truth to that here too, right? Though I think you have to be true to the game. So you got to get players to look at it and not just abuse it. But it is what it is. They never had a chance to refine this, mind you. Okay, 1, you can build a character, but you shouldn't ignore the world. Unlike Dungeons and Dragons, you're not locked into strict class lanes. You have flexibility in skills and development, but you are still in Middle Earth. So the real question isn't what do I want to play? It's what makes sense to exist in this world. So that's player buy-in, where players care about the setting. Like I say to players, if you really just want to play with any character you want, just go play D&D. If you're here to play this, you got to buy in. You got to say to yourself, this is what I want to experience. It is an experience first. Not just you just randomly playing a game. There's a game here, but it's an experience with a game. 2, race cultures actually matter. This is not just stat difference. Choosing man, elf, dwarf, hobbit changes lifespan, outlook, role in the world, how others treat you. This does a bit better job than D&D at enforcing you playing, in my opinion, an elf the way they want an elf to be. D&D has a good write-up, but I don't know how many games, even in old school, where the elf is just a human with pointy ears. Because the players really don't understand exactly, like it's really complicated what the elf is in the D&D game, so it can confuse a lot of people coming in. I find this simplifies a bit of that and makes it easier for you to play something different than a human. Like you'll somewhat understand it better. That's my experience with it. It got players to the point where they played a dwarf better. So they played an elf better. It wasn't just a human with pointy ears. Just saying. I think they did a good job here. You're choosing a place in the setting, not just abilities. Professions. Flexible, but not a free-for-all. MERP uses professions derived from role master, warrior, ranger, mage, cleric type roles, but they're less rigid than class systems. More about skill cost and development. You're shaping a direction, not looking into a box. If you go back and check out my role master stream, a lot of this that would help. The combination of these two, MERP and the role master stream, it would give you everything you need to know for sure. If I keep mentioning role master and I'm saying this and you're like, what is role master? Are you going to give me more about role master? I'm not. I'm being nice here. It is really focused on MERP. But if you want to understand some of the things I'm saying here about role master, because I'm just saying them where you need some assumption, the assumption will go away if you track back into my playlist of fact-based streams here and look for my coverage of role master. So anything here where you're not sure, when I mention role master is this, and you're like, yeah, but what does that mean? Go back to the role master stream and you'll know what that means. So you're shaping a direction, not walking into a box. That's how I'll finish off that part. 4, skills are the real core, as they always are, role master. This is where MERP shifts away from D&D thinking, just like Rollmaster. This is where Rollmaster becomes a benefit and really starts helping MERP itself, the Middle-earth game, separate from Dungeons & Dragons, because the mechanic system is different. There is a different feel than D&D. And in a way, that's good, because you think token, you think D&D, but Rollmaster really comes in, and from my experience, saves this game. It's a simplified Rollmaster, but Rollmaster is not D&D. So this is where MERP shifts away from D&D thinking. It really does, because it goes to Rollmaster thinking. You develop skills over time. Your effectiveness comes from investment. You're not defined purely by profession. This allows customization, growth paths, but also requires players to think long term. If you want to understand how this token game is definitely not D&D, this is where you really want to learn Rollmaster and understand your investment into Rollmaster really says a lot about your character. It's going to be the same here. Light version of Rollmaster, not, it's still Rollmaster. 5, magic users, where players can break the tone. This is a danger zone. The system allows spell casting professions access to magical development, but Token's world does not support high volume magic users everywhere. Players can easily create characters that mechanically work, but don't fit the setting at all. This is where discipline matters. So game masters, you really have to say, like, look, guys, I could just, like, if you get players that just don't want to do this, tell them, look, I could run D&D for you. I could even run Rollmaster if you want. But if you want to play Middle-earth and you take full advantage here and you turn it into spell casting like you think in D&D, the feel of whatever this is will go away on you guys. So you got to have a social contract and have a good talk with your players, right? Just say, like, look, if you're here for the token, for the Middle-earth, please, man, play to it, right? So, because they can break this on you. Like, really, you could put in host rules, but in a way, I'd rather have players that just are invested in this experience. And that's what you should be looking for. Starting powers, number 6, starting power level. More competent, but not dominant. Compared to early D&D, characters are often more capable at the start, but not world-changing. Again, it's more capable, meaning you can do more. You're not just like, it doesn't treat you like that raw level 1 character from D&D. You're not completely a pushover skill-wise and everything else. You're actually a little bit capable coming out of the gate, which is, we'll give you some options, really. You are skilled individuals right away. Not legendary figures. Philo, I'm glad you're here, dude. I've mentioned you a few times tonight. I know you know MERP because you know Rollmaster. So I just went through the fluff, which is not much. Influences token, you know that already. So I don't think you got to really overkill on watching that. The Game Master advice is really about some of the stuff I've talked about before. It's about focusing on setting. So Game Masters do have a balance of pushing tone and mythic, and it's also using Rollmaster. So Philo here can understand the difficulty of being a Game Master in MERP. Even though it's light Rollmaster, it's Rollmaster, right? And then you got to be the guy who pushes setting and atmosphere at the same time. See, in Rollmaster, you could just run Rollmaster and focus more on the charts and the mechanics and let players do what they want, almost like D&D in a way, in that freedom. But here, as a Game Master, it's a lot less freedom. It's Rollmaster, and you got to get that right. Then you got to get tone right. And here's what's crazy about, I'm into the character creation part so far down, but here's what this game does that makes it even more difficult for the Game Master to really talk players into it. It's characters can blow the game up and be made in a way that are completely anti-Middle-earth. That's the freedom, the insane freedom they give you. And they tell you that you need to convince your players to dial it back, even though they can make characters that would break the setting. And it just will. You have certain types of characters you could make that just break whatever the setting is. What they can do will not play well to the setting at all or the feel. You can kill the whole game. So you got to get players invested. You got to get them playing a character where they're willing to take the hit to make sure they're playing into the world, into the setting. So they're there for the experience. You got to do all that. Then you got to set tone, atmosphere. Then you got to fucking do roll master at the same time. Now I know you've had some experience with Merc, so you probably understand just how fucking difficult that would be. I'm hoping I'm helping people by giving them a heads up on what they really got to do here. You shouldn't put host rules in to limit players during character creation. Just make sure you got players that are fully invested in what this is. Because it's like, if you're invested, you're not going to make the character that blows up the game. If you want to play D&D or even more free Rollmaster, we'll do that, right? Now, I told some of the guys here, if they're confused about Rollmaster statements, like our friend Arca here, I don't know. But if anyone new is confused about Rollmaster statements, you know, I've already covered Rollmaster. We got a stream done on that, which I think I explained that really well. They can go save the confusion. You won't be confused. Well, that's good. Okay, equipment reflects the setting if done right. The system allows gear choices, but Middle-earth is not a magic item economy, a gear optimization game. Players should think cultural equipment, practical gear, travel needs, because that's another area of this game that's a little bit outside of even just pushing the tone and everything else. Travel itself, as I said earlier, is very important, right? I talked about a gimmick the other night that works really well for this. Look, you could be taking 2 weeks to get somewhere. Now, this game wants you to focus on having experience with travel. So travel is not meant to be just, oh, you say 2 weeks go by, you scratch off some food and you're at the gates. No, it wants you to actually experience travel. If you want to do it in a more reasonable, paced way, you don't got to do each day in major detail. But what you got to do is every small event that you want to have during the 2 weeks, it could be they're going out to hunt, they're going to see an animal out in the wild, they're going to see a church, or you want to purposely make events like that. And then over the 2 weeks, as you're saying, all right, half the day goes by, but then you see this. When you say you see that, it's you zoom in, and even if nothing happens, even if they end up bypassing the church, the point is you zoom in, you start role-playing in real time. Now they're traveling by the church. And you want to have that, you want to keep bumping in from that overview and give them role-play time in real time. And you do this several times during the 2 weeks. So by the time they're done the 2 weeks, they've actually spent some time. And at some parts, they'll even probably role play more than others. Maybe they do want to go in and check the church out. Let's go check out that building. That's abandoned. You know what I mean? Out of curiosity. Players can be this way. So that can be really important for travel time. Just to go back to that for a second. But we're on to gear here. So players should think again, cultural equipment, practical gear, travel needs. Not best possible loadout. Don't treat it like a video game. Treat it like an experience. And if you're looking for an experience in the field, you want to get the right gear to feel like you're a person in Middle-earth. Remember, you're looking for the experience. It's so important. If you want to play a more generic game, there's already D&D and other systems to play. So come here for the experience. You can make travel scenes. Some of them just can be encounters, chases. You get it right there. But you could say so many hours in the day go by, right? You don't got to sit there and overkill. But every time you're going into encounters, the building, the whatever, it's real-time role play. So now the 2 weeks isn't just instant. You're stopping, role play. Some of it could take longer depending on what players do. Some of it could be, okay, we're going to go by that. Cool, it's nice. All right, fine. You don't got to do anything. But the point is that stoppage and those stoppages is all to create time so you feel the travel. That's, to me, the important part of that. It's that feel. And you got it there, but it's me. I do hours by zoom in. Feel the travel. Feel the travel. And this game just really, I talked about it the other night, but I knew I was going to be running into Merc, which is where I really learned to do, where I started doing this. Because Merc drilled on me is make travel part of the game important. I was like, okay, because I was D&D DM. I had done that for about 2 years. And a lot of travel would be like, all right, a week is going to go by, scratch your food off, this. But then I did Merc. This is really where I changed my mindset. I was like, fuck, okay, I got to make that something. All right. How do I do that? And I start stopping more often than not and creating things to stop, to purposely have something for us to stop and zoom in on. I took that practice back to D&D. So I always tell people when you hear about running all these different games or playing different games, there can be value to it. If you have a core game like D&D, like I did, which is I play more often than not or run more often than not, it's playing all these other games taught me things to bring back or taught me the value, because some things you can find in D&D where the guy will say, you can do this, but you'll see a lot of people not doing it until you go to a game where the game enforces it. Then you do it and you go, oh, shit, I should have been doing that sooner. Sometimes you just need to have the experience to know the value of something, right? And that's how I became a more patient person and really became making this stuff more valuable. So 8, party composition is not designed machine. You can have mixed cultures, different professions, uneven capabilities, and that works. A lot of games were always trying to separate themselves from D&D. So you're going to hear me say stuff like this a lot, like party composition is not that important. A lot of games went after that because that's how they separate themselves from D&D, because D&D, party, like how you work as a party is important to Dungeons and Dragons. So if you don't want to be another D&D, these are the areas you go after. So uneven capabilities, and that works. But the party should feel like a group that belongs in the world. No, not a mechanically optimized team. That's what you're looking for here. People that fit Middle Earth, not a party that perfectly works together to make up for what one person is missing. It'd be like the halflings or the hobbits at the start. You know what I mean? When they finally travel out, it's not like they're all guys with just different skills or similar, but they're hobbits from Middle Earth. So the game is saying the experience is more important than you playing a video game or a board game. So it wants you to have the feel experience of you're playing Middle Earth characters. It's less concerned about making sure that player gets the skills of the things you didn't choose. Like you don't worry about that as much. 9, backstory actually matters here because the setting is established, detailed. Your character should come from somewhere real in the world, have context, have a place. This is one of the few games where backstory isn't optional fluff, it's grounding. Another reason is you're not getting into as much combat, even though it can be brutal in that the survivability factor is higher than, they would say with the way people play D&D. Survivability factor is a little bit more. So yes, go ahead. And they think backstory is important because you can backstory into the world. So make sure it's from a place in the world. Make sure you're making a backstory that plays to Middle Earth. This is again where you want everything you do to be part of the experience, not to be something separate from it. So players that might show up to you might be a D&D DM and you're running a setting and you say, there's no halflings there. And you'll have a player show up and go, could I play a halfling even though you've made it very clear there's no halflings there? This is a game where if the Middle Earth says there's not something here, you actually have to say no to a player for sure and actually see what they're doing as disrespect. Like you sort of got to play it. You got to make them understand that this is the place where you can't play the odd thing. Actually committing to the setting and playing exactly to what it is exactly what the setting demands from the player. So if it says something's not here, you really can't play the thing that's not there because the setting is more important than your personal experience. A lot of players in D&D feel like the game is first. My experience with the game and what I want to do is first. The setting is secondary. To a degree, they're not completely wrong. That's what makes games like this unique because when you get over to a game like this, like other games that are similar to it, setting is more important than what you're doing as a player. So you're there for the experience. And if you're there to experience the setting, you're not there to be opposed to it. So if there's none of this, you don't do that because that opposes the setting and the feel. You're there to play into it, not against it. So this is one where you could feel justified as a game master really drilling on the player. No, you can't do that. I got to powerfully say no, and I don't feel bad because this game just doesn't work if you're trying to work against what the setting is trying to push. 10, The big player responsibility. Merc quietly expects players to stay within tone, respect the setting, avoid breaking immersion of what the setting is, because the system won't fully stop you. The responsibility is on the player, not just the GM. Oh, Grim DM. It's only happened to me once when I was trying to run this, but I did have a guy try to do the D&D thing. But at the same time, I got to say, I understand now why DMs who learn this really value you not playing the thing. And like, if I'm pushing a setting in D&D and I want to create an experience for you, I still want you to be as free as you want as a D&D player. But I might say there's no happenings or none of this. Well, for me to push the tone the way I want you to experience it, it really becomes important to a degree, you not playing that thing. Just saying. This especially teaches you that if you're trying to get something out of a setting, it's really important players get that they shouldn't be playing against that stuff. So avoid breaking immersion because the system won't fully stop you. The responsibility is on the player, not just the GM. And the game does make you aware of that. It is telling players, not just like D&D where it's the player do what you want. This game will verbally tell the player, it's on you to work with the GM to make sure you're creating the experience. You're not something where you have a free sort of side glimpse into it. You try to do what you want. No, it's expecting you to have responsibility. The hard truth here, if a player wants full creative freedom with no limits, high magic power fantasy to optimize everything, Merp will let them, and then the game won't feel like Middle Earth anymore. So that's the crazy thing. Merp actually gives you the options to break it. But what it promises you this as a player, once you break it, if the GM allows it and you do all the things you want, you will not feel like you're in Middle Earth anymore. You'll be so opposed to the experience, you won't feel it, you won't even know it. It will become generic right away. And when you really do go to try to play a game like this, or D&D, imagine I'm trying to set a feeling for you. If all the players come up with characters that play against that, there's a generic thing that will overkill. That's why I say sometimes you could be playing a Forgotten Realms as a player and then playing Greyhawk, and the experience can be the same. Because in D&D, the setting doesn't push as hard. So if you're just freely doing what you want, sometimes you can forget that you're even in the Forgotten Realms or forget that you're in Greyhawk in comparison. That's why a setting sometimes can be helpful. Like Ravenloft can be hard to separate these things. There's no doubt. But then again, why does Ravenloft stick out or some of the other settings stick out a bit more? They put some restraints, just like this one does, on D&D players. So those restraints and limitations create the feel. But when you get to a more open setting in D&D, sometimes it can become very generic. Because the less it pushes, and you do what you want, the less you can feel it sometimes. This really teaches you this. D&D player, what build do I want? Merp player, what kind of person belongs in Middle Earth, and how do I stay true to that? Token poem, AD 1933, is about deliberate act of going on a journey or roaming in the search of adventure. 1,000,000%. This is why they want travel to be, he's really drilling on it here. But Token was really serious on this. The journey is the adventure. That's why, like, when I came up with that method of not just, oh, you skip 2 weeks, you scratch your food off, you're there. You don't do that in this game. This game is, you're meant to feel and experience the road, the journey. So you stop in and you role play when you're crossing or you're getting into the encounter or going by the church. You want players to feel like that is a massive piece of what they're doing. The adventure is that thing, right? It doesn't mean you gradually play every day in some weird overkill way, but you definitely don't want to speed past days or time, like continuously. Middle Earth role-playing setting. Now, you guys already know the setting, but I'm going to go into it so we can get into some details. This is the easiest part to recognize and the easiest part to mess up. Because unlike most RPGs, the setting is already defined and you are not in control of it. It's already what it is. This is Middle Earth, not a fantasy world like it, right? So it's meant to be what it is. Everything is grounded in the Lord of the Rings, geography, history, cultures, conflict. Not all who wander are lost. Some are looking for that. They're on the right road when they're on the journey. Exactly. That is home. Yeah, because if you look at what the Lord of the Rings myth is, it's myth for the British, the UK, parts of Europe, right? It is meant to be myth for them. So of course it's related to real history, and like he's saying here, associated with medieval chivalry, knights, whatnot. Of course it is. Of course it is. That's why some people don't get it when you're trying to twist this and make it something else like they did with some of the TV programming. That's why people get weirded out. It's like, no, just this is what it is. Okay. You're not creating a world, you are operating inside of it. That means you don't change it freely, you don't reshape it for gameplay. Timeline, late Third Age. Merc typically sits around the same era as Lord of the Rings, but avoids the main storyline. You are not replacing Frodo, as I said, leading the Fellowship, changing major events. You exist in gaps of the story. The tone, low magic, high myth. This is where most people fail when they're trying to run this game or play it. Middle Earth is grounded, subtle, mythic, not spell heavy, flashy, mechanically loud. Again, this is where you got to balance with the role master. Magic exists, is powerful, but is rare and often indirect. If it feels like a magic system first, you've lost the tone. Cultures are deep and distinct. This is one of the setting's biggest strengths. Different peoples are not just visual differences. What I was telling you about, not the pointy ears. They really do a good job on this. They are different worldviews, different values, different histories. They teach it to the common player better than I say D&D does. Right? So if you were to play an elf in this and you follow their guidelines for what an elf is, you're more likely playing an elf than a human with pointy ears. Like you'll do a better job here. I think it's something D&D should have learned. Examples: Rohirrim. This is culturally Rohirrim, warrior, culture, loyalty, horses. Gondorians, structured, political, declining greatness. Elves, ancient, fading, detached. Dwarves, proud, insular, craft focused. You don't just visit cultures, you interact with living traditions. Geography matters. Middle Earth is large, dangerous in places, empty in others. Travel is long, risky, meaningful. Everything me and Philo had mentioned, from the encounters to that long, to making the travel feel long, that's all this is. Travel is, like I said, long, risky, meaningful. You're dealing with forests that feel ancient, ruins that have history, regions shaped by past wars. So there's a lot of things that you can apply during the travel. They go into the forest. This is what they'd have to do if they're going into the forest. So there's all kinds of reasons to stop, zoom in, role play. Right? They give you the tools. In D&D, you could be making some of this up yourself, but you see the value in doing it when you're doing it in this game. Regions shaped by past wars. So distance and terrain are part of the experience. Threat is uneven and purposeful. The world is not balanced. Some areas are relatively safe. There might not be much encounter at all in certain areas on purpose. Others are extremely dangerous. Threats include orcs, dark forces, corruption spreading, but they are not evenly distributed for gameplay convenience. Meaning, if you go through a dangerous area, I could be putting a lot of encounters on you, like really insanely, like maybe like 3, which would be a lot for Rollmaster. Trust me, 3 encounters in an area. Wow, right? That's Rollmaster. Very brutal on combat. In some areas, there could be nothing. It's not because the world is, it's just the danger is not there compared to here. right? So that's what can happen. And it doesn't worry about balance. So it's like, well, shouldn't I get to at least one encounter going here? The world doesn't care. World, if it's safe there and there's no reason orcs would be there, something would be there, it won't be there. And the game master can play to that. They can actually purposely, there's just nothing there or a reason to have something there. You don't just force it. That's not what you do in this game. You're trying to be real to the setting. If you're being real as a game master, you don't think game first like D&D. You think setting first. And then if you stop and go, man, it'd be fun to have an encounter there, but it would be unrealistic for the setting. The game master is being told to bend to the experience in the setting. That's what the game master scrolled on this from the get-go. So that's when you just go, okay, no matter how, it just wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be there. The shadow is the real dungeon. Instead of constant dungeon crawling, you have influences of Sauron. Corruption spreading, darkness creeping into the world. This creates long-term tension, moral weight, slow building conflict. The enemy is not just monsters, it's influence and decay. There is no adventuring economy. You don't have magic shops, loot cycles, gear progression loops, wealth and items. Sounding really familiar, doesn't it, to some of the games I've already covered. Wealth and items are rare, have history, are meaningful. Find something special actually matters. So since it's rare and you're not going to be finding this stuff all the time, the idea is it's like we talked about the other night. The more slow-paced something is, where you're not just doing that over and over again like it's a toy, by the time you get to a magic item, because you won't get to many, it will be rare and you'll be like, holy fuck. That's awesome. Because you know it's just not something frequently you're getting to. So when you get to one, it's awesome to have one. They're rare. And you'll feel that if you actually make it rare. You don't even have to create atmosphere. As a good game master, just be patient. Don't just put the overkill stuff in. Don't magic item here, don't do that. Then you get to see the players value something. Because the less players have of something, when they finally get to something, you'll know it right away. You don't have to do anything. There's no little magic gimmick you got to do. You'll see them react to like, oh shit, I got this. And you'll see that it'll be a eureka moment for you. And this teaches you, if you don't already know it, you're going to go back to D&D. Wow, I should hold back some more than I do in D&D. Holy fuck, I didn't realize how valuable this is to not just give out stuff willy-nilly, right? So if you do that in D&D and then you come here and you get to see this, that's when it teaches you the value of something, right? The world does not revolve around you. Like a lot of these games, this is critical here. Major events happen without you. Great figures exist beyond you. History moves forward regardless. You are small-scale participants, and that's intentional. There's some people out there that don't like this. They don't like a world that is more important than your characters. Some people have, I think, I don't always agree, but they have arguments out there saying your character should always be more important than the world. That's a unique view, right? But this is intentional. A lot of old games do make the world more important than you. You're just bottom, right? You got to earn your way up. Or like Grim DM said the other night, you got to earn the attention from the world. Knowledge is power in this setting because the world is established. Knowing locations, understanding history, recognizing names matters. So if you're a fan of the whole thing, what it's saying to you is it rewards you. What it's saying is it appreciates Lord of the Rings fans. So it wants a fan to feel like they get to take advantage of stuff they're bringing to from knowing the actual lore, right? Players who engage in lore, culture, context get more out of the game, and you're meant to. It's meant to serve Lord of the Rings fans. Don't get it wrong. If you're new to Lord of the Rings, it's meant to educate you so you can enjoy it in a different way. It really is. At the same time, if you already know the stuff, it's meant to appease you, meant to please you, right? Build in constraint. This is what you need to keep in mind here. The setting is strong. The system is flexible. The tension is The more freedom you take, the less it feels like Middle Earth. So again, it's built-in constraint. Limitations. Hold back. Play to what it is, and you won't regret it. That's what they're trying to say to you. They're saying, yeah, look, you can play the powerful character, but if you don't, you'll enjoy this. So don't worry. We're not trying to give you a less experience. We're actually saying that if you play to the restraint, you get more. Because you already can get generic in other games. So if you're here for the experience, you'll get more if you play to it. And that is true. The hard truth here, most RPG settings are built to support gameplay. Middle Earth is not. MERP is forcing a game system to operate inside of the world that was never designed to be a game. That's true. That's why you really got to balance here, because Rolemaster, the system is good if you like the system, but it's trying to bend a system that wasn't made for this. And in all honesty, in reality, a world in that not really built to be a game, it's trying to get it all meshed together. It didn't work perfectly for this, but it worked pretty well. And that's both its strength and its biggest challenge. So a lot of work to the game master. D&D setting. Here's a world built for adventure. MERP setting. Here's a world that already exists. Don't break it. Okay. What it does better or different. It actually lets you play inside of a real setting. Most RPGs give you a world inspired by something. MERP gives you the Lord of the Rings as playable space. Not like Tolkien, not inspired by Tolkien, actually Tolkien's world. That's a huge difference. The setting already has depth. History, the history already exists. The cultures already matter. It expands the world without replacing it. Instead, rewriting major events, replacing key characters. So it's not doing that. MERP explores lesser known regions, builds outside stories, adds detail without breaking canon. They did a really good job on that. They don't do it like you see on the TV show. There's no worry about their real life timeline. They don't try to bend Lord of the Rings to be something they want. It just seems like they want to make it what they think it would actually be based on what Tolkien was pitching. That's really important here. So there's no manipulation of the content in that way. It turns Middle Earth from a story into a living play environment. That's what it's trying to do and does a pretty good job. It balances accessibility and depth better than its parent system. It's if you like or if you're interested in Rolemaster, I would almost say if you want to have a Rolemaster experience, it's a bit easier. This is it. I think Philo would agree with me because Philo's a hardcore Rolemaster guy. If you wanted to know what Rolemaster was in a lighter way, get an experience with it early before crossing to Rolemaster, MERP might be your starting point. So it balances better than its parent system. Compared to Rolemaster, MERP is simpler, easier to approach, faster to run, but still keeps skill-based progression, tactical combat depth, character flexibility. It hits middle ground. More depth than the basic systems, less overload than full Chartmaster, Rolemaster. As we already went over, travel and journey actually matter. The books ICE made for the parts of the world, the maps, information, the adventure, made out very high quality. Extremely. When you're given the official license and you get your chance, man, some old books are so valuable that I almost go like, it's like even if you didn't like, I'll go over to Millennium's Robotech stuff. If you wanted to do Robotech, I don't know how you could ever go anywhere else for it. Same thing with MERP. If you ever want to do Lord of the Rings, even with a different system, go to MERP. Philo's 1,000,000% right. That MERP is training for Rolemaster. I really mean that too. It's a great introduction to Rolemaster. If you just needed a touch of Rolemaster without it having blow up your fucking head, and so we could find the players that are going to be more suitable for it, MERP is a great, easier starting point because you get an idea of what Rolemaster is. And then you can actually bring that experience into Rolemaster, which will speed you up in the gameplay. I've actually seen MERP people try Rolemaster afterwards and be able to adapt to the game quicker. Like just so it is, I feel like you hit it right on the head there. It is perfect sort of training grounds for Rollmaster. And me and Philo know it's hard to bring in somebody raw to Rollmaster sometimes. This is a great way to not bring them in raw. Now, travel and journey actually matters. Went over that. Fast forward, you want to skip fast forward movement. You don't want to do that. Terrain matters, distance matters. So there is some things where you want to focus on, like what terrain you're going over, if it's rough or not. So if you got to be careful over some terrain, I might even zoom in and we'll do some role play. This is rough terrain. We're going to do a roll. You're going to get over it, but you guys can talk for a minute while you're going over these areas. Traveling over the wagon, walking, you know what I mean? So it's every excuse you can to sort of stop and do some role play. It's just, you don't got to turn it into you play every hour of the day. That's all I would say. You can just skip so much time, hit a role play area. Skip so much time, hit a role play area. It's just doing that pretty consistently through the journey. So you really feel like you're constantly maybe stopping once a day for something, maybe the camp at the end of the night type of thing, but you do that. You don't just do it every so many days like in D&D. You don't just skip over time like in D&D where it's a full week gone. No, this is meant to be stop, zoom in, role play for a minute. And usually, at the very least, once a day, there should be something you zoom in for. Boom. Unless it gets to some gradual time passing, you're in an area where there's simply no reason. You could say, you can get away with saying 2 days go by here, but on the morning of the third day, but again, you're making your best effort to zoom in, and stop, just skipping time over. Cultures do feel distinct. Cultures and the races. Again, I think MERP does something special here because of the way this stuff is painted in Lord of the Rings. And like Philo says here, the material really does justice to Lord of the Rings. And if you think you have a hard time understanding what an elf is in D&D and you can't really play an elf that well for what the really advanced view of that, because they take real history, go to the Lord of the Rings MERP here and check out their elves. There are some similarities, but it explains it better to you. It's a lot easier for you to actually play an elf without feeling like you're playing a human with pointy ears. It's a lot easier to play a dwarf for what a dwarf is because there's a culture built in with them, and you'll play to the culture in a better way than you would in D&D. It doesn't mean some people didn't do a really good job. Really unique role players I met in D&D that could do a so unique of a character. It's not just a human with pointy ears. But most players, even in the old school, had a hard time playing the elf in the advanced way that you're really trying to push in D&D. But here in the MERP game, it just does a way better job at getting even the players who aren't the hardest thinkers in the world to actually pull off and understand how to play the dwarf culturally, the elf culturally. In a way, I'd almost want to take this over to D&D, or at least the lessons learned. So players that play an elf here, when they go back to D&D, even if they totally don't get the D&D elf, they can play this elf, right? And they'll understand it, and they'll be able to play a character that's not just a human with pointy ears. And that is really important to experience. Then, in this game, it does do something that in a lot of other games just don't bother doing. Like, in D&D, if you're playing Forgotten Realms, it's not like the game or the game master is told or the DM is told to reward you for knowing a lot about the Forgotten Realms. Actually, in a way, DMs can get annoyed that you know too much, right? Where it's different in this game. In MERP, the more you know about Lord of the Rings and you can apply that to your character, the more the game rewards you. It even tells the fucking game master, hey, if they're bringing up knowledge which helps the other players learn shit that might not know stuff, you reward with a chance of an interaction. You reward with opportunities to get something better. You actually reward it. So you being a fan, the game cares. The whole experience cares that you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, right? So it rewards you. So if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, this game is about taking care of you, rewarding your knowledge. You brought something, it's going to reward you for making the experience for yourself and the other players and the game master better. And the more you know, the more the game is going to expect you to lean more into it than even the other players will. So if you know a lot, they expect you to make the characters like, don't overpower, even though you have the options, but you're a fan of this. So we expect you to want to actually play a proper Middle Earth character. Now, combat, because of its roots, combat can be fast, brutal, decisive, but it's not the main loop. This creates respect for danger, smarter decision making. This is where Rollmaster does something beautiful. I actually had this opinion. I think Philo would agree with me here. Because of how brutal Rollmaster combat is, and the fact that you're in a setting where the game makes it a rare event, it makes you respect combat. You take combat deadly serious in Merc. And if you know Rollmaster, you definitely take it deadly serious, but you're happy that it's rare. You're like, it's Rollmaster combat, but it's not frequent. Important to remember, Gary Gygax didn't attribute much more than superficial influence of the Lord of the Rings on D&D, and never cinched Elvis and D&D to by token nest. No, that's why I said they go more real world, right? I totally get what you're saying, Grim DM. There's a toss up. Some people think he's more influenced. Some people think he's not, and he has contradicting statements about a lot of things. It's not a debate I care for, but I would say this. I'll read the rest of it. But token portrayal, of course, became gold standard for what elves and dwarves, etc. were. Here's what I would just say. I totally agree with you. That's why I said his is more real world. That's where they're getting their elves from. I just found that a lot of players had a hard time understanding what the D&D elf was. And I bet you know what I mean, Grim. I don't know how many guys played elves where you're just like, if you go back and read and then you really examine the role play, you're just like, okay. I mean, they might be trying, right? The only difference is, I would say, even if you're someone who doesn't know Lord of the Rings, this is what I'm trying to say. Like a new player goes to Merc and they're going to read about the elves and play the elves culturally. They'll play something unique from the humans. They'll have an easier time understanding it. And I'm not saying you got to copy Lord of the Rings as far as making an elf, but I wish they were in a way more simple, focused on things where it affects role play, because the cultural stuff built into Lord of the Rings affects role play. And it's simple too, but it simply affects role play in a way that doesn't. It's in the D&D game, but it doesn't communicate itself that well to the average player. So you get a lot of players, they'll say, well, in WotC D&D, you see humans with pointy ears. I'm like, yeah, well, in old school, most players played humans with pointy ears because they sucked at playing elves, right? I just found my experience with this game is bringing in some new players that didn't know much about Lord of the Rings, but they played elves. They could understand the elves, not just because it was Lord of the Rings, but because of the way Merc puts them together with the Lord of the Rings information. But it's more simplistic, more easier to get. It's a lesson I wish D&D would have learned and just said, we don't got to do tokens, elves, but we should simplify ours a bit more and focus more on the cultural side of just the elves in a more simple way, so we can get whatever our elves are in a unique way. You see the write-up like this for the elves. Go watch players playing the old school. Most of them would try to get some of it. There'll be a lot of flopping. Just got to be real. And most people still play, even old school, play the elves for the benefits. I'm taking an elf because I get a +1 with a longsword and a bow. How many guys do you meet doing that? Right? How many guys do you meet that were, they can find secrets easier? I'll play the elf. And you go watch them play the elf and you're like, yeah, that's... So on the role play aspect, I just think Merc, it's a personal opinion, so it's not a debate here. Just a personal opinion. I think they did a better job getting people into the role play zone of what their elf was or what their dwarf was. And especially if you're a fucking fan of the show already or the story, it's going to be easier anyway, right? And it does do, if the game master is doing this right, it does bridge two different design worlds together really well. Merc does sit between simulation-heavy systems and narrative world fidelity. It combines mechanical structure, role master, and strong setting identity. That combination really is rare. Usually one wins over the other. This is a rare case where a company already has a hard mechanical chart master game, role master, and they're also trying to take chivalry and sorcery, if you get what I'm saying, something in the vein of that, and mix the two. Chivalry and sorcery is not exactly this. It has a more simple mechanical system to adjust to the setting and stuff that we talked about the other night. What makes MERP unique is it's trying to do that with Rollmaster. If you know Rollmaster, that's not exactly the same thing. Chivalry and Sorcery more plays to the setting overall, and the mechanics play to it. Where it's imagine Rollmaster is more about the actual mechanics, and you're trying to bend a very complicated game into a Chivalry and Sorcery type of setting. It is unique and different, even though there's similarities here to the Chivalry and Sorcery that you hear me saying. The unique change is doing it with Rollmaster, the mechanic system. That's a big difference. Okay, this is the last part I'm going to cover. Criticism and defense. I think we've already went through a few of these, but we'll just go. The system doesn't fit token. Number one criticism. MERP is built off of Rollmaster. The system is mechanical, detailed, combat capable. Token world, subtle, mythic, low magic, and presentation. This is a clear mismatch. The defense from people that like MERP. MERP is an attempt to make token playable, not perfectly, but it doesn't perfectly replicate it. You need structure to run a game. You need mechanics to resolve actions. The system is a tool, not the tone. The GM and the players are responsible for keeping the feel intact. So this is one game where it says, yes, the work on the Game Master is so hard. It's not denied. That the book is telling you, the language talks to you as a player, you really have to be on the team of the DM here, of the Game Master. Poul Anderson, so many books about him. I hear so many statements online about him that, yes, I would 100% agree that he's more influencing on D&D than Tolkien, especially with the Elvis area. Craig is 1,000,000% correct. I would also agree with that. It's not like I read a bunch on, but yeah, once you start reading even little takes he has on Elvis, and then you go to read D&D Elvis, 100% Poul Anderson's Elvis are, in the Broken Sword, as he says, are much closer to D&D than Tolkien's. Look, you got to remember, Tolkien is just like even like Poul, they're just taken from real world. So there's some things that might be similar, but Tolkien does have a unique take on it for his story. Poul Anderson takes a lot of real world stuff and just more tries to describe what it really is instead of trying to change it. Tolkien, I'll admit, he takes real world myth and tries to adjust it for the UK, for Europe in different ways for his myth. So he's the guy who takes older myth and then tries to adjust the myth. Poul Anderson more tries to, this is my take, this is a personal opinion, Craig. I don't know if you'd agree with this or not, but he just tries to take the myth and explain it. Like, if he uses myth, he just tries to use it for what it is. Also, The Armies of Elfland by Poul Anderson. Poul Anderson's work is so fucking amazing. So many statements are used to describe role-playing old school that when Craig advises you of these books and that, you should really go look them up. Poul Anderson is a legend. Criticism number 2. Magic is too common, too accessible. The reality, players can build spell users, use magic regularly, which clashes with the Lord of the Rings. Defense, the system allows it, but doesn't require it. How can I say? They wanted to keep the license and keep making new editions, update the game. And they thought if their game became more popular, they wanted other options. I'll be real with you. I think that's why they left this open. You'd be like, why can you make a character that can break the whole thing? Well, in the first game, they want you to really take the raw experience with Middle-earth. But if there was an expansion and they could compete with D&D, they needed to set a standard that would allow them to break principle. That I think that's my. They were very upset when they lost a license because they thought they might, with the license, be able to get enough people, because having Lord of the Rings as your license definitely got them more people looking their way than a lot of other tabletop role-playing games. And they thought there is a chance we could compete. And if we can compete, we need to set a standard that can open up our game and do other things. That's the honest truth for why I think they kept that way. I mean, remember, they made Rollmaster. These people wanted to succeed. They just didn't want to just make the games for hobbyists. They wanted something serious here. And I think there was some like, hey, play to this first edition properly, but the reason we're putting this in there that might confuse you is we're trying to set a standard so we can make something unique later, and we don't have to make a big change. We can say, oh, that was always there. Just my take. So the defense system allows it, but it doesn't require tables and force tone, limit magic use, treat it as rare, apply social consequences. MERP gives freedom, but expects discipline. Criticism number 3, it feels too gamey. The reality, skill systems, combat tables, this is Rollmaster, character progression, which is meant to be a bit gamey, all feels like a game engine. That's what Rollmaster is. Defense. Without that structure, you don't have a playable system. So you do need the Rollmaster rules to have a game. Pure narrative wouldn't support consistent play. Mechanics provide fairness, resolution, continuity. The key is use the system. Don't let it dominate the tone. That's the balance. So it's not that you'd be wrong, but if a game master is really just giving you light Rollmaster and less focused on Middle Earth as you're playing the game, it can feel too gamey. That's more of an error on the game master side than it would be on the actual game, or at least the intention of the game. And in criticism number 4, it encourages the wrong kind of characters. The reality, players can create high-powered builds, magic-heavy characters, out-of-tone concepts. These are 2 different types of complaints on it. Defense, MERP assumes players will respect the setting. There is some, hey, if you want to play D&D and go blow shit up and do it, go do that. Or there's Rollmaster, so that what they're saying is there's so much competition, why would you want to come into this and just do the same thing here? Right? So that it feels like it can talk you into it because it feels like you have too many options where why would you bother coming here if you just want to do that? Like, why are you here if you just want to do that? So MERP assumes players will respect the setting. The rules don't fully restrict you. The expectation is you stay within Middle Earth logic. This is a table discipline issue, not just a system flaw. It is a system flaw when you look at it for it's optional. But again, why would they put that in? Why would they confuse you with that option? I think, and it's what you see with D&D, watch the editions too. Putting stuff in where it's not really meant, they don't want you to play the broken Munchkin character, but they might want to use that stuff later. So they're going to establish it now anyway. I feel like a lot of these criticisms are things that are easily managed by the DM. Conversation session zeros have before actual play happens. 100%. Guess what? Sadly, there's a few of us like me and you, Grim, that get that. And then if you're like me and you get out and you meet a lot of DMs, like you're in a community of, like, say, the military family when I was growing up, it is sad how many people don't do the right stuff. That's like, you're here, and I'm glad I drew people like you here, an experienced guy like you here. Very happy to get experienced guys like you here, guys with common sense. But most people in the hobby are animals. I hate to say it in a rude way like that, but it's what they say about the world, right? So it's common sense can be lacking. Or, in all honesty, as much as you might have a talk with some people, some players don't play that way anyway, even after agreeing. They get loose. They get lazy. Some game masters they're actually nervous about doing all this. They forget things. It falls apart on them. Like, not everyone's just confident and pulls it off. So inspiration, drilling, getting people to stay on thing, being authoritarian, being a bit of an authority as a game master, having the nerve to say something, push something, make sure something happens. And players that just want to test things even when you think they should know better. It's a sad world we live in, even in the hobby, even back in the old school, even now. Because so many people, sadly, either test things, push too far, want this, get careless, are stupid about things. It's just the truth. So a lot of these complaints are like things being attributed to its department when it's HR issue. Complete true. But I get what you're saying, but here's the reason I brought this. These are the complaints that ICE itself put out that they got. Like when they talked about their complaints, this was it. So I'm not going just by fans here and trying to dish on them. Trust me, I'm really not. but I had to report what is officially out there because I want to remember it's all fact-based coverage here, right? So I wanted to know what did they say were the complaints, not just what I vaguely hear, but just to make sure that this is considered official by the company, right? And I look for things, even D&D. Most of the complaints I got for D&D and other games actually come from the actual company, and they did talk about their complaints and the issues they tried to deal with, and they ran into this stuff. Here, criticism 5: combat is too diddly, swingy. Reality: critical hits, fast resolution, brutal outcomes inherited from Rollmaster. Defense: the danger fits the world better than safe. See, I'm putting defense in because these are the defenses the company gives most of the time, like to the stuff. So they actually counter some of the stuff. So when I put defense, it's a mix of, I'll hear super fans of the game saying this stuff. I've heard them say it. But the companies usually put up what is a reasonable defense to these things, why you're running into these issues. And a lot of people don't read everything in full, don't take everything. So you get complaints where people are careless. And even the DM, sadly, is careless. But these were common. These were so common that they got them, right? So I went over them. And yeah. So it's like danger fits the world better than safe. So in some cases, these aren't just complaints. Actually, the company thinks they're okay. Predictable combat fights feel risky. Decision matters. Avoidance becomes smart play. It reinforces caution, planning, respect for danger. It can seem bad on the front of it, and sometimes maybe the reasoning isn't so written into the book. Like, why would you allow this? D&D has a lot of this, guilty of it, where it just assumes you'll try it and you'll figure it out why it exists. And some people just don't get it. If it's not spelled out to you sometimes, that's why you come back with the complaint. In a lot of ways, this is stuff where what I'm explaining to you, I'm making it all sound too easy. I'm being too fair to MERP. Because if I were to criticize MERP a little bit, it's like a lot of other games out there. It puts stuff in, it doesn't always tell you why. And then you go to play it, you feel like there's something wrong because you haven't picked up your own wisdom about the game and why it's playing out that way. They just hope that if you just do everything we say, you'll figure it out. It just doesn't work that way. In a way, they should have explained a lot of this and their reasoning behind certain choices right away. And they should have known it through game testing and figured out that why wasn't their game tester saying, well, this feels a bit off. But then when they would come up with their reasoning, communicate the reasoning into the text. Some things need to be spelled out for people. Here's the real divide. People who dislike MERP usually want strong mechanical clarity, full player freedom, system-driven consistency. People who like it want immersion in Middle-earth, respect for tone, a living world experience. Critics, the system and the setting don't match. That's the criticism on Rollmaster. Defenders, it's the closest you can get playing Middle-earth without losing what makes it Middle-earth. There. Now, I promise you, in the near future, the space opera, Bushido, and Shadowrun will be very different games from each other. I knew this was going to sound a little bit like Chivalry and Sorcery because Chivalry and Sorcery has the same exact approach to setting and caring about setting. The only odd thing with MERP is Chivalry and Sorcery has a great mechanical system for what it is. Imagine trying to do Chivalry and Sorcery with Rollmaster. That's the hard part here because Rollmaster is not made for that. Rollmaster is focused more on the system. And if you're like Philo, you'll enjoy that system. It's going to be more focused on the gameplay engine than worrying too much about the setting, right? Setting will just be chaotic, whatever it is. If you're playing Rollmaster, it's gonna make a setting feel a certain way. So usually you don't have to worry. But with MERP, you're trying to put a setting which Rollmaster wasn't made to. The engine itself doesn't give you Lord of the Rings. So Rollmaster initially, if you play, you won't feel like you're playing Lord of the Rings at all. So imagine trying to take Rollmaster that is not made for the setting and adjust it. They do a pretty good job. Now, why are the extended options in there? I still believe to this day. Why would they allow players to break the game so easily? I think they planned on having a second, third, fourth, fifth editions just like a lot of other companies. And they thought with the token gimmick, the license for Lord of the Rings, that they would sell better than some of the games like Chivalry and Sorcery. They thought Chivalry and Sorcery not bad, because you can hear this from their designers. They talk about some of these older games, and they think they're not bad, but they thought without a high IP like they had, without like Lord of the Rings, they could outdo these guys and steal that market away. That's really what their thing was. They thought they could steal the market away from like Chivalry and Sorcery. Good game, but they could take that market easily. Just saying. It's not as hot, but the reading for Middle Earth, if you want to know about Middle Earth, the gathered information is great. My one benefit to this is getting people to play Elvis to War, so it's a lot easier, say, than in D&D, to get them to play the race right. In D&D, an elf is usually going to be picked because of the benefits they bring to gameplay. In MERP, the elf could be picked because of the interesting role play it brings into the game. Now, you wish more D&D players would pick elves because of the role play aspect, but in reality, they're picking elves because elves get a plus with their bow and their sword, and they can find the thing easier. And why would anybody be offended by people playing that way in D&D, right? Don't agree with the take mechanics don't fit Lord of the Rings. People can take issue with how the combat mechanics work, but I fail to see how people can say mechanics don't fit Middle Earth. I'm not saying exactly that you can't. I'm with you. I'm with you. For the record, I haven't played Merc or Rollmaster. I've done both, but I'm going to take your issue here serious, not just disrespected. So Philo would be more supportive of me here, but he's not around. That's fine. I'll make the point. Especially if you go listen to the Rollmaster stream. If you get a chance for that, Grim DM, I would say definitely go check that out. But I'm not going to skip this over. Rollmaster is made for a very specific. It's called Chartmaster, and it's definitely not made for, like, say, medieval fantasy. I would say it's not made like a D&D game. Like, the system is meant to be something completely different. It has a lot of charts for even action. How roll to hit an opponent and apply modifiers. Only gonna. Oh, I get it. It's understanding how to play Rollmaster can be very difficult, even though this eases up on it. There's a lot of charts here. Skill-based, all this. See, if you think you're playing Lord of the Rings, most characters are more... I would say Lord of the Rings definitely leans into the idea of classes, but Rollmaster doesn't. So Rollmaster leans into skills. I'm not saying that's bad, but sometimes when I would run it, I could definitely see where D&D might have been inspired by Lord of the Rings as far as the ranger, the fighters, the this, the that. Magic users were something even Gary opposed, which again, I think magic users are unique to D&D with the way they do them. But I would say Rollmaster is definitely in a zone of getting away from skill focused. So it's, as much as there might be this, it's more skill focused, and there's not a big major focus on skills in the same way in Lord of the Rings. So that's one small separation. Combat, I agree with you to a degree, but then some of the combat that you see in Lord of the Rings or even read about, it's hard to replicate that with Rollmaster system. Just saying. I mean, just being real with you there. You'd have a better chance replicating it with Chivalry and Sorceries system or D&D. So when you see the encounters and the way, if you read Lord of the Rings and you know about their fights, some of the fights, the way they play out with rules, you have a hard time achieving that play out with Rollmaster. Category based on class. So they do lean into it. Philo's not wrong here, but Philo's also sort of telling you why. It's almost like with Rollmaster, the guys making Merp understood there was more class leaning than Rollmaster skill leaning. And so even though Rollmaster still brings its skill base, it does what Philo's saying here, because it sort of accepts what I'm saying with the class thing. It tries to adjust to it, even though Rollmaster itself, as Philo's pointing out, is really just skill focused, right? More than anything, right? So that there's a reverse on that. I think the brutal combat is good. I actually like Merp's brutal combat. But if you ask me, if you read Lord of the Rings and you read about its combat and then you go to Rollmaster's combat, which I like, so I don't want to sound like I'm insulting it, it's hard to, I would say, redo some of the combat stuff with Rollmaster's rules. It's way more brutal, right? So the longer lasting fights, I would say it's almost easier to do that with other systems than it would be with Rollmaster. So if you're someone who's hardcore Lord of the Rings, some of these things could put you slightly off. And if you're a nerd, nerds are, they take things. So it's not grim DM. I get the common sense of what you're saying. It's not so far off that, like, if you're not a super nerd, it's not a big issue. So to me, it's not a big issue. And that's my honest opinion, not a big issue, right? Yeah. I have a lot more classes, and it's not token based. ICE also made their own setting, Shadow World. Yep. It's Rollmaster is made for a different feel and a different experience, and that's nothing wrong with that. I like Rollmaster. Adjusting it over is a bit challenging if you're someone trying to get if you're trying to serve a super nerd fan on Lord of the Rings, you might find some challenges. Yeah. Yeah. What you do with skills are so important in Rollmaster. Skills are your character. Forget the class thing. It's classes there. There's a lot of, I guess you want to put it that way, but skills are the core of Rollmaster. Very core. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And it's, all I'm going to say is, if you're used to playing other systems, you already know their system's more made for that stuff. I'm just saying. Now, I'm with you, Grim DM. I don't think it's a big issue. If you're not extremely super nerd on the whole thing, it's not a big issue. It's whatever, right? But if you heard the nerds, they complained. Our fellow nerds bitched, sent that in as complaints. And just think about how picky people can be now. And so it shouldn't shock you that people can be that picky. A lot of games where I do the criticism defense part, even I think some of the criticisms are fucking stupid. But these are what the companies put out. And what my only thing I'd say to the companies that might have gotten them past this, and when I'm explaining something to you, Grim, about the game, the truth is a lot of the explaining it out in the text is not there in the actual game. So the wisdom I'm giving you about the game here, the overview, if you really go read it, it doesn't always explain the wisdom of their choices. So you're left with players that might not be deep thinkers, or game masters not the deepest thinkers, especially players not the deepest thinkers, trying to figure it out and going, this is bad, without realizing what it creates. It's like some classes cannot train all skills. Some are ridiculously expensive, so no sane power would train it. And stick to the class specific where it shines. There you go. But a lot of stuff I cover here, it's the reason they get the complaints is it's not spelled out in the text. And if you don't spell things out to people, they complain. It's like we talked last night about long-term gaming. You get the long-term gaming. It's hard to explain to people that there's a value to the long-term gaming where you're not going to fight all the time. You're not going to do all this. Fighting might be dangerous. It might not be action-based, but you're good. And some classes can train more than one skill rank, +5 on D100, yep, per level. Other classes are limited to training 1 or none. Mm-hmm. Class is the class choice or profession choice is so important to pick because it decides on how you can upgrade your skills. But skills are the core more than the actual class itself. You'll lean more on the specific skills that makes who your character is. I'm with you. I actually felt it was fine. I ran Merc because I actually liked it. Like, as long as you stick more to the setting, you're fine. That's it. Most games are actually pretty good at doing most of the stuff they're actually doing in reality. It's just that most people in the hobby don't appreciate certain things, or they get too picky. I know this from putting out a game myself where I think in an area I've done really good, but I'll hear like complaints from people, and I'm like, that's an issue. But I guess, once you do it yourself, you finally figure out why the company was getting complaints. And they actually get more than one. So a lot of people can just get too super picky. Or some people like, I prefer this, so I'll just hate this for that reason. But yeah, this was the complaints they had. If you actually go back to MERP, when they were trying to figure out how to upgrade their game, they're taking all the complaints serious. But they're coming out and explaining them, saying, we actually think we covered this stuff well. So they're like you, Grim. They actually think they did a good job. I actually think they did good too. That's why I kept running MERP for a while. But they would come out with these for the complaints. So these are just complaints that are, I would say, and this is what the MERP team even agrees with me on. They didn't spell this stuff out too well in the book, right? That's a lot of companies. D&D was like this too. D&D would have some amazingly interesting stuff. Like, a lot of people don't know you're not really supposed to be looking for combat from level 1 to like level 3, 4. It's not that well spelled out in the books. So people try. So people do all kinds of action based, gameplay with it, right? So if you don't spell things out, this is where you get complaints. People assume things really quick, and they assume things off small things. Like, I'm a long-term game master. I remember running a session for a new player. One of my first times I had this experience in like 93. I usually ran for guys that knew what was up. But I ran for someone outside of my normal group, and they came into the game and said, do you always do this? Even though I had to talk with them, told them all kinds of things beforehand. I'm a long-term game master. What we might do here might not be like every session. I don't balance out my sessions to always be just all combat or so much this. I do a variety of things. I give you what the situation calls for, is my argument, meaning sometimes it could be a session where it's more social interaction than combat. So you don't have to assume I won't do these things. I will, and I wanted to make that clear. Still have a player come in after the first session. So it was like, you do barely any combat? Because maybe they came into that first session and there's a lot of social interaction happening. And we're just not on to the part where it's boom, right? Always heard about it, but only in general. Grew up poor, so just only look at MERP stuff on the racks as a kid. I was no more rich than you, Grim DM. I just got lucky knowing old guys that had the games. And they'd let me borrow the games and print them. So I'd be over at the guy's house, like Rollmaster, same thing. Oh man, this looks like a really hard game, charts and everything. Steven, you can borrow the book. Because I knew what it meant. Borrow the book meant I was going to go get it printed if I wanted to play it. So I'd read through it, and if I wanted to play, I go print it. So most of my early material is all printed books. Like, it's not hardcover at all. Like, most of the games I played were all printed on paper. I'd borrow the books from people that had the books because we had a large community. Some people think the system is complex, but it's really not. It's in basic, you have a stat, bonus plus race, bonus plus skill, bonus plus skill, bonus. It's item, bonus, if applicable. Here's what I would say. Here, Philo's right, but here's where people had a hard time with these things. Performing. Like, it all could make sense to you. But then you go run the game. It's performing where people fall apart a lot of times. And most of the time, most of the complaints really, if you really looked at them, it's more from a player being in a game with a game master that wasn't doing well. But they think game masters are like machines. If this is what the game is, and I go play it, well, it didn't run that way, but they don't really account for the fact that the game master might be off on what they're doing. That's the truth. Well, it does say photocopy for some personal use only, so definitely didn't break any rules. I mean, I just used it for play, not for selling it, right? I copped the full satanic panic my mom in the 80s, so all my sessions were clandestine operations. They were actually like contributed to my love for AD&D. I totally hear that. See, I'm in Canada. We skip satanic panic. My family just didn't care. Just didn't give a good goddamn. They knew if they said don't play it, they'd hear a heat from me. So if you're in position, definitely, I'd say if you want to understand Rollmaster, pick up Rollmaster. If you want to understand Rollmaster better, go listen to my thing on Rollmaster. That's where we get into the D100, the rules. Everything Philo just mentioned there is all mentioned, but then some. Character creation, how to run it, but I go into the rules at the end because the rules were really important. So that's the worth mentioning part. Where I already did that, I'd only be doing worth mentioning Rollmaster rules at the end of this. I don't get to do that because I already have a Rollmaster stream up where I do all the rules. So everything Philo mentioned there, I mentioned in the stream. So that'd be good. It just there's some more stuff in there too, right? Yeah, Philo's a Norway guy. He's like Black Rose. He's Norway. So Grim DM is American, and he did the Satanic Panic. Again, I never Satanic Panic didn't bother me. And my family knew if they told me like, Steven, you can't play D&D because of this stuff, I'd just be like, well, I'm going to play it so you can suck my ass. Oh yeah, Australia. What am I saying? Here's the thing, Grim DM. I'm assuming in Australia was Call of Cthulhu a thing. Steam tunnels coverage. Then you're maybe from a Christian family or something. I'm from a Roman Catholic family that just were not hardcore about this stuff. They didn't care. Very moderate Roman Catholic family. The Satanic Panic, if you go back to the AD&D, it's not even that stuff that really got people going. It's the demon stuff. That's what I would say. Whenever I really talk to Christians over the years and talk to them about their families, what would they say? It wasn't just that there was news on this stuff. It was news, but then they go check the books out. So what is my kid playing? And they get to the part of the book where it's like demons. Well, this is Satan stuff. Why do you think they took that language out for second edition, right? Yeah, Craig. According to the people who worked there, the steelworks where I grew up did a good job impression of the hell. So Satan wasn't really a threat. Vampire the Masquerade. Oh, you're what? World of Darkness. Yep, I'm actually running that currently. Vampire the Masquerade too. Definitely digging in. I'll do some reports on the games I'm running. I've been thinking of doing some videos on those because I run a second edition game in the World of Darkness. And I'm like, maybe I'll do a bit of a couple of videos on what's happening, who the characters are, what's going down. Yeah, Grim DM. I do Christian family. That's why in Australia you had the bump. That's why. Here it's just for me it was Roman Catholic family, but in Canada I never heard it was. I ran the game for Christians. They never had their parents. They don't play. But there were a few parents that were a little offy about it because of like AD&D first edition. You read into it and you get to the part where it's like demons. The fuck? That was the what the fuck thing, right? That's where guys had some issues. At least in Canada, it was more about just reading those parts. The second edition, even though a lot of the old school guys from AD&D 1E got mad at the changes, they made the changes so they didn't have parents reading about demons. If you're making a game for young people, I wish they would do that more now, because now in the new WotC editions, you pretty much got everything. It's almost like the Satanic Panic would be more appropriate for some of the stuff I see in there than anything that came out in AD&D or back in the 80s, right? But whatever. It's like now it's even more, there's more of a shine on some of the satanic stuff. In D&D, nobody seems to give a fuck. It's almost say the Satanic Panic was a way of giving a get out of jail free card. It's my take. But honestly, if I were to want to play a game like this, I would go to the Chivalry and Sorcery. That's more appealing to me. Overall, if I want to do Rollmaster, I personally would go do Rollmaster. I did MERP for a while. I don't think I'd ever go back to MERP. But I did like it for what it was. It was a lighter version of MERP. Philo's right, though. If you're someone who really wanted to get into Rollmaster, it'd be great to start with MERP. Yeah. That's at least people told me the same thing. It was easier to go play MERP than it was D&D. And MERP was a great, hey, if you don't know what Rollmaster is and you go to their company, even the company staff talks says the same thing what me and Philo said, which is if you really want to understand our Rollmaster system, this is actually a good place to start. Play some MERP, you'll understand the engine, and then here we have a game called Rollmaster, which is based on the engine's based off of, right? Which is a little bit more extreme, but more out. It's called Chartmaster. It's not hard to understand, but Rollmaster is its performance area where people have a hard time with it. That's true for a lot of games. I can bring you a lot of games that are easy to understand. It's just where they fail is some people might run them really slow because it's like you need to have your charts ready. So as a game master, you need to have all the charts ready. You need to have all this stuff ready. Really cool ideas. But man, if you're sitting there in the middle of a session digging through, it slows down. That's the problem for Rollmaster. That's where people got to get used to it and set themselves up for it. That's where me and Philo would understand where a game like that starts. It goes into a little death spiral. Is you need to be more prepared. With MERP, it's a little less preparation and you can run it a little faster. The Rollmaster engine, the lighter, simpler version of it. But if you go straight to Rollmaster, it's not hard. It's easy to understand. It's just when you go into the game, if you don't have everything ready and you're not used to reading the charts really quickly, that's another important thing. It's not just having the charts ready. You got to get used to reading charts. So it's in performance where the game works, but the game can get really, really slow. And that can kill pace. And pace matters even in Rollmaster, right? For fun. That was the advice you gave that night we talked, to make a folder with photocopy, all the charts, quick access. That's exactly it. Now, once you understand what that is, like Philo is pointing out here, and you prepare yourself for it, and not just that you prepare that photocopy thing, but in performance, you get used to reading charts quickly that you have set up for you. The game can flow, and you see the brilliance in Rollmaster. So it's easy to understand. It's in performance is where Rollmaster takes an early hit. That's why you're warned about Rollmaster. You won't really have the best experience with it when you're getting used to it. But once you get used to it, that's when you run into the magic. That's when you go, oh shit, this is why it's so fucking good, man. This is fucking brilliant, right? But you got to get to that point. Because on those first early nights, if you got a game master who just isn't prepared, like say Philo hasn't had a talk with us, He's going to be digging through charts. It's going to take you forever to do shit. And it's going to kill you. It's going to be boring, right? No matter how good eventually Rollmaster will become for you, in the early slog of it all, it's boring. Absolutely boring, right? Like if you're in the slow pace, which is true for most games, right? So slow isn't like slow, like Shimmering Sorcery isn't meant to be fast, but it's not slow as in what you're doing is just, you can do it in a certain pace, but yeah, that's where MERP is a great way to experience what potentially the Rollmaster engine is. But then when you get over to Rollmaster, but it helps, it does help. Now I've seen guys go from MERP to Rollmaster having a better, at least a better understanding of what Rollmaster was going to be, and even being influenced to prepare without being told. So I've seen guys go over to do Rollmaster after MERP going, man, I think I'm going to do something like Philo's suggesting here, but without needing to have the fucking hardcore experience with Rollmaster to wake up and go, I gotta get prepared for this. If you're coming into Rollmaster without any preparation, nobody's had to talk with you. Oh shit. But that's it. That's all. And you got to have people that are committed, because it's not just you got to keep up with charts. The players got to keep up with you. It's a team sport when it comes to Rollmaster. But when you get the right players that understand what they're doing, so you got to get the players knowing what that charts are going to be called for their actions. Players should know this stuff. It's going to help them understand what they're doing compared to what they're asking the game master to do. So when they're asking, it's sort of like a team function here. If you play it right together, the experienced player and the game master, man, the game starts to flow, right? Now, in a slower game, like I say, slower game like Chivalry Sorcery, when I tell people that's slow, it's not slow in the way you play the game. Like when you're doing social interaction, as long as the game master is applying things smoothly, you can. But in all games, no matter how easy they are to understand, which a lot of them are, the weakest part of the game is always going to be the people needing to improve and learn. There's no game that doesn't have that issue. It's always going to be the people need to improve. And like you said earlier, Grim, you said a lot of this could be social contract stuff. It takes people to learn and gain wisdom if stuff's not spelled out for them. And the worst thing about some of these game companies is they do the game testing, they pick up the wisdom. And I'm like, well, yeah, you didn't write it in the book, though, dude. You didn't write the wisdom into the material. Like, I know stuff that I talked to Gary Gygax directly about D&D. Like I said, you're really supposed to avoid most all combat, like to level like 3 and 4, right? Yeah. Do you see that anywhere really greatly spelled out in D&D? Nope. Most people think you're supposed to make 5 characters because you're going to go into the action. It can be right away. It's just going to be hard. They just think action's up front, but it's going to be hard. Like, no, actually, you don't have to go through 5 characters most of the time. If you avoid most of the action, is it well written, that wisdom into the material? No. Do most people make 5 characters and even DMs after years still going in and playing the action from 1 to 3? Yes, they do. Old school still does it to this day. I know guys that have done it online in our faces, where they start off, they've been in the hobby for 30 or 40 years. They're doing a live play on YouTube. The characters are going to start at level 1. And they're making 5 characters, and they're going straight into the action. You're like, okay, well, that's not how you're supposed to do it. Actually, the guys are supposed to be avoiding the action. But the guys, even after 40 years, don't know that. They've been running D&D for 40 years with the action assumed up front. And that you get lucky if you survive and you die if you don't. It's like, it's not that survival isn't the key to the game, but it's not just that you skip the dragon fight. Even the fights that you might be able to win, you're meant to skip if you can. And that's why there's no such thing as a non-combat encounter. The way they have encounter set up, if you actually go read it out, it should wake you up, but if it's not written out, you won't realize it. I realized it early on. I'm reading how you do encounters. And all the options in encounters aren't for the fight. They're all ways to avoid the fight. That's when I started realizing, because I go over to Traveler, avoid fighting. Fighting is a punishment. Go over to the Chivalry game, avoid fighting. Fighting is a punishment. Go over to this game. It's considered like if you can avoid combat in this game, you avoid it. And almost every game is avoid combat. I'm like, why is everyone playing D&D? And I go read the encounter thing and I line it up. I'm like, you're not meant to be doing almost any combat from level 1 to 3. And that's when I had a eureka moment. Now, that's scary about this. Is this why? Because people would do the combat up front, but then you would hear complaints like this. Man, I stopped doing gold for XP. I thought that was stupid. But when you realize you're not supposed to be fighting, how else would you get experience? That's why they did gold to XP. And that's why gold is lined up with training. Get it? You get enough gold to level you up. You'll have so much left over to buy better gear and so much to pay for your training. That's why it's all lined up that way. That's why gold is meant to get you XP. You know, the old school guys, I know that will make you make 5 characters, go into the action. You're going to level up through the action if you can, right? It's going to be a struggle fest. And they take experience points away from gold. And I'm like, it's complete reversal what the game is actually meant to be. But the wisdom is not written into the material. Same thing with Rollmaster to a degree, not well written in the wisdom, right? But you figure it out through experience on your own. At least that's what they hope. Because if not, you get these weird complaints where it's like they put the answers out in. Like, what's weird is, and Dragon Magazine did it pretty well. You could find a lot of the explanations that they don't put into the actual D&D books in Dragon Magazine. Because you get a lot of complaints saying, so when I did the criticism defense for D&D, I had to get a lot of it from the staff in the Dragon Magazine. But they write up the wisdom. Here's why we do this. Same thing with the MERP guys, or the Rollmaster guys in general. When you go to the complaints on MERP, they explain it, but you realize they don't really explain this in the book that well. So it's, again, when I'm doing the coverage of it now, what can confuse some people, and I get it now, like mighty confuse you, Grim, is I've explained it all pretty well to you. So you're like hearing what I'm saying in the wisdom of what you're supposed to do. And you're going, well, if everyone knows this, why would they put the complaints up? Problem is, even though I'm doing the overview, I should be honest. Most of the wisdom I'm sharing with you is not in the book, right? D&D and MERP and RM is critical tables. A character is often out of the fight before reaching 0. You get injuries that take months to heal sometimes. And not just injuries, losing an arm. You're sitting there fighting, and the chirp, there goes your arm. Right? And it could take forever, like Philo is saying here, to get where you can fight with normal numbers again. And so fights can be over for a character before they're even dead. Right? Completely right there, Philo. That's exactly it. Your death isn't always the biggest threat. You're already degraded once you're fucking getting cut open, or you're fucking getting an arm chopped off, or in some cases it could be even worse. Your eye. Oh. So, and they have all the tables for this, so you can go through all this weird fucking damage to you that fucks up your character so much that the fight is over before it's over. Or it's you can win under those conditions, but fighting is meant to be avoided. That's what Philo is pointing out to you too here. Combat, it's not Rollmaster is not an action first game. Action is considered, fighting is punishment. It uses resources up and takes body parts away from you. It does everything. Critical hit can also be instant kill. So you can get some really cinematic fights. You also can roll open-ended, so the weakest can, in theory, defeat the strongest. That's 1,000,000%. But again, that's where it's made to make combat something you want to avoid. But if you don't, it can look beautiful because you're role playing. The fighting in Rollmaster doesn't care. How could I say it doesn't care that you're playing a game? It's not meant to be the action where you just heal up and go back at it again. It just doesn't give a fuck. And here you can't just rest after being hacked by a battle axe and be fine 8 hours later. So combat, because these are a lot of guys that make these games are war gamers. And war gamers always look at combat as something brutal that should punish you, because realistic combat does. So it even games like Rollmaster, almost every old school tabletop role playing game, combat is something you want to avoid. Combat is punishment. Combat uses up resources. So if you're going to do combat, here's where Philo would agree with me: have better gear, be in a better position, understand how deadly it can get if it draws out. Look for ways to end fights almost instantly if you're going to get into them. Have the better gear so you can try to avoid some of the stuff that's going to happen to you right away. So what you really want to do early on in games like this, it doesn't mean you can't eventually handle some action. It's just that you want to put yourself in the best spot. Strategy is important in Rollmaster. It's deeply important. It's so, and this is not just a trick, it's almost in all games. Strategy and combat, you look at combat like, hey, you know, it's not safe. It's not meant to be action-paced game. You want to make sure you can hit hard, fast, and quick. You want to give yourself range options. You want to give yourself knock down the fight right away if you can. If you can scare, and they're all war gamers. So if you can hit an enemy hard enough and effective enough and say the right words through even interaction, the way you talk to them, you could scare off an enemy. You could defeat their leader and make them run right away so you don't get to get into the long, drawn-out fight. But you as a player need to realize this is not a video game. If you run up like, I'm going to fight, this is not a video game, dude. This is old school mindset. This is combat can fuck you up so bad. It's something you want to avoid at all costs. And early in Rollmaster, a good Rollmaster player, if they can talk themselves out of a fight, they focus. That's when role play, social interaction with an enemy becomes fucking deadly important. Because if you can avoid the fight and keep peace, like, look, guys, there's not a reason we need to fucking cut each other's heads off right now. Or if you can scare the enemy, scare them, right? And it being a low magic setting, healing critical injuries is not just casting a spell or drink potions. Sometimes you have to retire a character. There you go. Game can be over pretty quickly. See, a Rollmaster game can last a long time if you play it right, but here's Philo telling you, your character doesn't even have to die. You can get like a fight or two and go, yeah, this guy's done. I mean, it's almost ineffective to keep playing him at this point. You'll retire him. Or you can struggle through. The part of the game is to struggle through these mistakes. You lost an arm, you won't be getting it back. But here's what I would say to Philo. My argument to be some of those guys, I'd always try to get guys to play it out to death. Because I'd always tell them, if combat's not the core focus of the game, even if your guy's not good at fighting, maybe the struggle of overcoming his problems is part of what you're going to do here. But some players would feel like Philo is saying, yeah, he's ineffective, I'm going to retire. At level, and Grim will add the level at one point. But what he's saying is it's not getting saved from consequences. He was just starting to become effective, but his death was an epic scene and retires character sheet with honor. Of course. If you had some time to play in someone, it's character death isn't something I want you to cry over, but I always like it when players feel bad, because even though, and I want you to be mature, get ready for the next character, but the way you honor them and you understand the experience playing the character is coming to the end. I always got to remind DMs again, like, well, you fucking bitch about, oh man, if your player is okay, but they feel bad about character death, you want them to care, because what does caring mean? It means they were having a good experience with the character. Now, you want them to be mature and make the next character, but that connection means you enjoyed the experience. And you got to remember, it's not just character death. You're taking an experience away from a player. That's what's happening when they lose that connection, right? RM Merp also have well thought out herb system. Yeah, it does. Lots of herbs. It's not only drinking potions. They have prepared and getting into ingredient. It's to make up for lack of magic. But that's cool, because where they lack in one thing, they go, well, is there other areas where we can somewhat help out? And they deep dive into on some things that are very valuable, like the herbs. Completely right. Tragedy can also be a good story ending. Really need to bring him back to Grok. Not sure what pictures I have of him, mainly just videos. We'll have to take a look. He was so rewarding to play and don't regret dying for a second. Well, it's not regret. It's just I say you get some people out there that think, oh, well, your character was just a fighter. Who cares? Character death means nothing. Because they'll be trying their best to overkill, making fun of people that totally get that, monkey. They'll be totally sitting there crapping on the newer gamers. But I'm like, yeah, well, I get what you're saying about the character death story. Not a problem, monkey. That's all good. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're even around. That's good. That's good. I hope you're enjoying either way. But just to say, I like it when a player just goes, shit, that sucks. I want that feeling at the very least, because I know if it sucks that you lost a character, that just means you were having a good experience. If you're like, yeah, fuck it, I don't care. Your connection to that character is completely not there, and you're probably not, that player is probably not having the good time that you're having, Grim DM. That's where I say I like someone who gives a fuck, but is still good on just making the next character and we're cool, right? Yes, she is. No worries, monkey. I love you, monkey. You're good. You're safe. I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for the time either way. We're all good. But yes, 2 hours and 21 minutes. Here's the thing. This was just a weekend where I knew I was doing two similar games, but the one unique thing about MERP is it uses Rollmaster. Glad we had this talk. I think it's a lot of great information. I still think if you're going to really want a setting game that's better fitted to its actual mechanics, Chivalry and Sorcery, I think is a better choice if I were to be promoting one of the two. But if you're like Philo and like the idea of Rollmaster, the effectiveness of MERP is it's a good lean in. Play a little bit of MERP to get an idea of Rollmaster, and it will effectively help you playing the overall Rollmaster, which guys like Philo would appreciate, somebody who has some experience with MERP, because they know they don't got to teach you every fucking thing about the game engine coming in, right? So you're someone who already has something in the back pocket, which is really good for a Rollmaster game, having something in the back pocket, especially if you hit a group of experienced Rollmaster guys. Then at least you got some understanding of what you're doing, right? Yes, yes. And this Tuesday is off script. I'll just try to bring some topics I'll mention so we can all have a good time. Just random, like I love these talks that we're having now tonight. So more of that, please. Right? I'll bring some stuff. And then where I hope it gets a bit more interesting, because I know I just did two setting games where I said a lot of similar things from Chivalry to this. I know that's a little dry. I understood that was going to be a bit dry, but I knew that's what this weekend was going to be, was Chivalry and Sorcery setting with MERP being the same thing. There'd be a lot of crossover and description there. I knew that was going to happen. I wrote it out that way because it's true for both on the setting front. It's just the difference with Chivalry Sorcery is it works better with it, I think, just overall with the mechanics. And the other one works well with Rollmaster. Yes, Craig. Love you. Off script now. And I know Craig's looking forward to this. Space Opera, but Bushido. So Space Opera is Thursday after the off script Tuesday. And then we go into Bushido on Saturday, which will be unique. So both Space Opera, and they won't be crossover talks. But neither will Sunday, my birthday, May 3rd, will be Shadow Run. So there'll be no crossover talk for this week. Off script, and then 3 unique games. Okay, I love you guys. Take care.